When the creature first blinked at me from the doorway, I thought I had lost my mind, or that the city had finally learned how to dream in my bed. I remember the exact sound that woke me, not a creak or a footstep, but a faint, wet whisper, like silk sliding across skin. I sat up, heart 2 beats behind my breath, and smelled something that did not belong to my apartment, an old, iron sour scent, like copper left in rain. The light from the hallway was wrong, too thin and sepia, as if someone had filtered the world through a memory. I live alone in a building that remembers its tenants by the stains on the stairs. My nights used to be eaten by the radio and a lamp left on for company. Now, the silence has weight. That night, the lamp flickered and died, and where its glow had been, there was a shape taller than any woman and narrower than my fear. At first, I could only make out the outline, a torso perched above a halo of thin, crooked limbs, each joint too many, each angle cruel. A head, impossibly human, hung above the skeleton of a spider's body. Her hair was a dark, oil-slick mane that hung like a curtain, and her eyes were the pale, unreadable slits of someone who had learned to look without blinking. I tell you this not as an attempt at drama, but as a confession. I didn't scream right away. My mouth felt full of silk, my throat cottoned by a slow, sweet numbness. I pressed my palms to the mattress and listened for the ordinary sounds of the building, the neighbors' late-night keys, the distant laugh from the street, and they were all drowned under a new rhythm, the gentle, deliberate tapping of long legs against wood. It was rhythmic enough to be a lullaby and wrong enough to be a threat. Each tap mapped her approach like a metronome marking time until something inside me broke. The hallway light came from behind her, throwing her into a backlit silhouette that turned human features into something carved and ancient. Close enough now, I could see the fine threads clinging to her limbs, the way dust collected in the folds of the joints like memories. There was a smell of damp paper and old perfume, a residue of lives she had worn like clothes. When she tilted her head, the movement was small and inquisitive. She seemed curious, and that curiosity felt worse than malice. The apartment, suddenly too small, filled with the soft scraping of the legs and the impossible stillness of her gaze. I realized then that whatever this was, it knew where I slept. It knew the sound of my breath, and it had chosen to wait. After the first night, denial felt like a luxury I could no longer afford. I slept in fits, eyes open, staring at the dark corners as if I could will them into being ordinary again. She did not come every hour. She came in tides, patient and precise. Sometimes I would wake to the faint clinging of silk under my cheek, as if a scarf had been draped there and then vanished. Once I found a single, fine filament stretched across the bathroom mirror, glinting like a seam connecting two worlds. When I breathed on the glass, the fog spelled my name in the way a hand spells secrets, slow, deliberate, almost tender. Small things started to change. My apartment's door, which I always left latched, sat unlatched twice in as many days. My shoes were rearranged, not thrown, placed with care, toes pointing away from the closet. I discovered the faintest impressions on the plaster ceiling, as if long, thin fingers had tried to press messages into it. At night, there were new sounds, a scraping above the drop ceiling that meant feet moving in a place I had never considered traversable, and sometimes a soft, almost human humming that warped the silence into something intimate and obscene. Neighbors grew distant. When I tried to tell Mrs. Alvarez from 3B, she smiled like someone listening to a radio show and then changed the subject, as if my words had become background static. I began to suspect she, or whatever she was, had ways of occupying rooms beyond mine, of pressing at the seams between people. Once I heard my own laughter echo from the hallway, a second too late, arranged in the wrong key. It was my voice and not my voice. It knew the cadence of my life and used it to lower the guard I kept over myself. Then came the first night I woke to voices arguing in the small space between sleep and the world. They were fragments, a child bargaining, a lover pleading, a man swearing softly in the dark. They mixed into a chorus that pulled at the edges of my memories until I could not tell where my past ended and the sounds began. In the morning, I found photographs I did not remember taking laid on my kitchen table. Polaroids, edges curling, each one showing the same doorway from differing angles, and in every one she was closer. In some, I was in the frame, asleep on the couch, my face lax and unaware beneath the thin spider legs that arched over me like punctuation. It taught itself to mimic more than voice. Once, while shaving, I watched the reflection in the mirror glitch as if someone had cut a reel. For a breath, the reflection lagged behind my movement and then smiled with a mouth that was not mine. The air turned metallic. My skin felt stretched over old wounds that had nothing to do with my body. I began finding tiny, pitted eggs tucked beneath the hem of my shirts, behind the ends of books, beneath the lip of a mug. They were the size of beads, warm and slightly sticky, and if I held one to the light, it pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat learning how to be a secret. By then, sleep was a negotiation box I opened at my own risk, and the nights answered with new clauses. I tried to leave. I packed a bag with a shaky, ritualistic care, toothbrush, passport, a lighter, as if naming the ordinary things would anchor me to a self that still belonged in daylight. The hallway felt different on the way out, as if the building had taken a breath and held it. The door handle was warm beneath my palm, as if someone had just been there. When I pulled it, the latch clicked in a way I had never heard before, a wet, satisfied sound that slid along bone. Outside, the stairwell smelled of old smoke and damp wool. The lights above the landings were dimmed to a dusk that didn't change as I climbed. I pressed my back against the concrete and listened. Far below, someone was singing to themselves, a lullaby with the wrong cadence, and above me, the ceiling hummed with a dry, patient scratching. My phone had no bars. The city beyond the building's brick was a distant rumor in my head, as if the space between me and the world had been measured and found wanting. I thought of those Polaroids, the ones that showed me asleep while she watched. I thought of the eggs tucked like secrets in the hem of my life. I thought of Mrs. Alvarez's smile, the way it had slipped into static when I spoke her name. The thought settled into a plan. I would smoke out the thing that hid in my rooms. I would light every soft thing, every curtain and paper, and watch the shadows recoil. Fire is honest. It has no patience for secrets. I struck the lighter, and my hands did not shake so much as tremble with a resigned certainty. The first flame licked a corner of the curtain, and then it doubled, greedy, and the room filled with the hot, bitter scent of burning fabric. The sound she made then was not a scream, but a low, delighted rustle, like leaves answering a wind. Legs scraped across the ceiling in a frenzy I had not heard before, as if punished or enamored. Something cold brushed my ankle, and I looked down to find one of the eggs cracked open, a thin, pale filament curling free and tasting the air. I ran then, through smoke that tasted like wet paper and salt, and the stairwell blurred into a corridor of hands, not human, long and jointed and grease-dark, reaching from hidden seams to catch me as I passed. They did not burn. They moved with a patience that was learning speed. Behind me, the apartment doors opened and faces leaned into the light, their eyes glassy, mouths slightly slack, hair like oil. In one window, a neighbor stared blankly at the rising smoke and then turned her face to me with an expression that was not quite recognition and not quite hunger. The last clear thing I remember was my reflection, split by the flame, watching me with a smile that had more teeth than mine. Then something took my voice and spoke my name the way a lover might, slow and intimate, and the world folded inward like a door being closed. If this reaches you, listen to the gaps. She knows how to be patient.
Subscribe to Horror Story Book.